Coleman Domingo. And new to the series, though we saw him at the tail end of last season, is Jeremiah, Dayton Callie. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. I know you're all busy. I'm assuming since you're here, you've all been killed off in a giant explosion. Let's just talk about what we just saw. We're not going to give anything away again, but what can you tell us about the reemergence here of Daniel right at the end? Do we know if what we're seeing is real? Because we know on this show, if you don't see someone actually dying, there's a good chance they might come back.
What we saw is real. Daniel is back. We've been looking forward to bringing him back for a long time. So, yeah, this is a little bit of a taste. And then next week, there's actually a very Daniel-centric episode. So I think we'll get a lot of information about where he went, what happened, how he found his way to the dam.
Great, that's awesome. Speaking of, well, we thought he had died last season, though there was a chance he could come back, and he did. I wanted to start off by talking about how this season kind of opened in a very impactful way with the death of Travis. And if Dave, you and Gail could talk about how that has, why you chose to do that right at the top and how that works to drive this season in particular.
I mean, a big part of the season really is about morality, the loss of, and I think Travis was, he was the moral compass of the show. And I think what we're going to see happen, the reason to do it early was to drive Alycia, Nick, and Madison in a very specific way. I think in his absence, everyone, especially Madison, kind of doubles down on the cruel elements of the apocalypse and what you have to do to survive. And I think part of what is, as a thread, part of what the season's about is trying to get back to what Travis offered throughout the duration of seasons 1 and 2. I know he had a bit of a dark turn at the end, but for the most part, he was sort of this rock. He was consistent, and then he wasn't, and then he was gone. But it was really about the emotional impact that has on Alycia and Madison and Nick. I mean, Alycia was with him when he went, and she's also wrestling with the fact that she killed the man last season. So there's a lot going on. And then Madison's just in a place where she has to do anything humanly possible to protect the kids again, and then she's willing to associate with some very unseemly people to do it.
Kim and Alycia, if you could talk also just more specifically about your characters in the wake of Travis's death and how that is formulating how you feel about being at the Brokejaw Ranch and with the people that may not have been responsible for his death, but certainly caused the chaos that led him to that helicopter and so forth. Where are your characters going forward? What are their mindsets?
Well, I think, like Dave said, Madison really sort of takes control and doubles down. I don't think she could bear his sacrifice to be for nothing, and I think Madison goes pretty dark this season, and I think that sort of spins her off in that direction. She becomes really merciless to do, in doing whatever she needs to do to survive and save her family. So that sort of propels her in that direction, I would say.
And Alycia?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's such an element of guilt there that Travis did sacrifice his life in some extent. So, and Alycia was there when it happened and had to deliver the news and bear that burden the whole way until they got to the ranch. And so, finally, when they did, it's sort of like, I think Alycia feels she owes it to Madison to then sort of stay and support her and try and get through this as the family and kind of try and bring everything back together.
Alycia?
I'd like to make it clear that they're the bad people. I mean, you're the bad people.
The outsiders, the unprepared.
Yeah, sure. We'll see.
We'll see.
But this episode in particular, Alycia, it was fun to see your character lighten up and laugh.
Yeah, how good was that? It was a funny episode too.
Yeah.
It was funny when we were filming it as well. Like, it was a very different tone to what we were used to. And I remember when you and I were filming, like, there's the scene where we're at the cafeteria and we were struggling with it so much because we were like, what is different? And I was like, the tone. Like there's something, this entire script was suddenly a little bit, I don't know, like macabre but absurd and then a little funny. And so it was great, I mean, for me to be able to actually then have some time with some teenagers as well and explore that side of Alycia that we never really got to see. You know, she never did the whole college thing. She didn't do, we never saw her let loose in any way. She's always had to be the responsible one. And we finally get to just see her just sort of try and fit in and be a kid, and it's great. I mean, I had such a fun time filming it as well. It was like a nice change from being stressed and like running around and breathless. And I was like, oh, I just get to hang out. It's great.
And I think you can share the microphone. I think that's fine. But also, when characters on The Walking Dead, David Gale, when they find shelter, whether it's a long stretch or temporary, does that sort of allow for lighter moments? Because this is a heavy universe, and when there is food and shelter and a little bit of assurance, does that allow for these comedy beats that you wouldn't normally be able to do?
Absolutely, and I have to say, for all of us who were commenting on this, watching this episode with you, it was great that you got the joke. It was great to hear you laugh and understand that it was okay to laugh. And the truth is that going back to the films that I've made, like Terminator and Aliens, humor is very much part of it. Humor is what makes us human. I don't know, there's a lot of joking in the rest of the animal kingdom. And being able to enjoy that brief respite from survival, and even during survival when you're faced with death, like Bill Paxton did such a great job, and as Hudson in Aliens, we're all gonna die, it really enables you to connect with the characters in a way that you can't always in the action moments.
And if you could talk a little bit too about the choice to bring a Doomsday Prepper sort of survivalist camp into this season and what that means, because you do want people to land somewhere for a while, but this dynamic is really interesting because there's a lot of places where they're finding middle ground, but then a lot of places where they're butting heads a lot. What was behind the choice to bring in these type of characters?
I mean, it's a big dynamic for the season, and the reason we met Dayton last season, the reason they are preppers, but they really started as a militia group, and they were patrolling the border, and it was an attempt to bring as many border elements into the season as we could, just as a backdrop, because we obviously established Mexico last season, and that story that we pick up, continues throughout the season as well. And eventually there'll be an integration of both sides of that. But it's interesting because I think the big challenge for Maddie and for the family this season is to really dirty themselves a little bit, because there are good people at the ranch, and then there are very, very bad people. Of course, Dayton's not one of them. Dayton's
One of the good guys.
One of the good guys. But obviously Troy has some issues, and I think that there's a lot of there's an element at this place which is tarnished, and these are people that some of whom Madison would not have associated with prior to the apocalypse, and so now it's really a question of, okay, how far will I go in order to? But it's an important distinction, because I do think that's really, in terms of the question of morality, one of the elements of the season is coming to realize exactly how good or bad Dayton's character might be, and then also, in what some of the sins that they committed, some of the crimes committed prior to the apocalypse, how those might come and bite them on the ass as the season progresses. And the more you learn, the harder it is to continue the association. So,
And I always love the fact that the criticism we got on The Walking Dead and the comic book has gotten was always, well, if I were to survive the zombie apocalypse, I'd go out on a yacht. Well, we saw how that turned out. And then the other group is, well, I would, connect with a group of preppers. Well, we're going to see this season how that works out.
Speaking of preppers, Dayton, if you could talk a bit about what it's like to join this universe, this show, and as prepared as Jeremiah was for the end of the world. This was the way the world has fallen is definitely not something you could have predicted with the walkers and the rise of the undead. Is that an element that possibly even took him by surprise, as prepared as he was?
Well, having all these goody two-shoes come into my ranch was a bit of a shock.
Goody two-shoes? Don't know about that.
You know, all these proper people.
So he probably wasn't expecting as many people trying to use his place.
No, they don't belong in my place. But he deals with them. And I don't know, what'd you ask?
I mean, how prepared was he for what is happening? And because he's not, like you said, he doesn't rule like an autocrat, but he's just sort of letting things happen in stride. He's not really pounding his fist and demanding things. Was he prepared to have the Broke Jaw Ranch be the way it is right now?
Well, yeah. I don't know if anything's really different. He just let a few new people in. And he's got to check them out and see what they're worth. And I'm sure, you know...
It could be worth a lot to you.
Could be. Could be. We'll have to see what happens.
Being that this is the ATX TV Fest, it's awesome to see Kim, you and Dayton back together after Deadwood.
Oh.
Yeah, it was fun to be reunited. Sort of.
As we left,
Sort of.
sort of. As we left the 2-episode season premiere, Madison was very determined to possibly overrun this place if necessary, but there seemed to be some bonding going on between Madison and Dayton this episode, some similarities that they didn't expect. What was that sort of like to play, and where does that leave Madison coming out of this? Is she still set to take over, or is she trying to assimilate more?
Yeah, well, I think assimilation is sort of a part of the means to the end. He's part of the process for Madison, getting to know Otto and letting him know her was sort of a manipulation, I think. But I mean, that's part of it. We'll see where it goes. But that initially, she's pretty quick to assess.
Yeah, I think Otto kind of likes her spunkiness, you know. And,
Yeah.
It's refreshing, you know, for him to have a little banter back with, you know. And Kim is full of banter, you know. In between takes, she's got a lot to say.
Kim, was
Why
it?
did we invite him?
Kim, was it fun to sort of say, like, I am very difficult to like to sort of proclaim that when you're asked for your character, because this is someone who has to and has already had to make really hard choices that, you know, and you're on a show where every character has to make these types of choices, and fans are so invested, they're like, I wouldn't have done that, or I would have totally done that. But to be able to say something like that feels very liberating.
Oh, I love that little banter right there.
Yeah, I like that exchange between them because, you know, it is very liberating for the character because, and I think it's going to resonate with the audience too. It's like Madison, she sees it, you know, every day. She's got nothing left to lose. She'll put everything on the line. She doesn't care about being liked, certainly, you know. But she's something to be reckoned with. She lets him know.
Coleman, you are not on the Broke Jaw Ranch at the moment. You're off on your Strands on his own side adventure. And what I really like about your character is that you're, you know, in the premiere you start, well, he can speak Spanish, you know, and it's something...
Didn't know that, did you?
Yeah, so...
Neither did I.
But it's indicative of Strand as being somebody who doesn't show all his cards to everyone, and I expect, like, there could even be a scene where there's a tank and someone's like, we gotta get out of here, and he's like, follow me, and I know how to drive a tank, or something like that. I mean, that has to be really fun to play, especially when you do get a script, and like you said, you didn't know he speaks Spanish, because you're always discovering something like that because he's so full of secrets.
That's what's exciting. What were we gonna say?
He has to, it's fun to play a bullshitter.
Yes, it's nice to play Dayton Callie.